Battle of Iwo Jima, a costly American victory in the Pacific. The battle took place in the last year of World War II, starting on the 19th of February and lasting until the 26th of March, 1945. The island was one of the first Japanese home islands to be landed on by American forces. Here, the Japanese were to make a point of showing the Americans they would fight bitterly for every inch of Japanese soil. The Japanese stationed just under 21,000 men on the volcanic island, which was heavily fortified with bunkers and artillery positions, including 18 kilometers or 11 miles of tunnels. America sent a massive fleet to pound and flatten the small 8-square-mile island in preparation for invasion. Over 500 ships took part in the operation, including several battleships and 18 fleet and light carriers, carrying more than 1,000 aircraft. At Iwo Jima, America had more than twice the air power Japan used to attack Pearl Harbor. The overall landing force for the Battle of Iwo Jima consisted of roughly 70,000 U.S. service members, primarily Marines, who were part of the 3rd, 4th, and 5th Marine Divisions. Several thousand essential U.S. Navy Seabees also took part, men who had to both fight and build, responsible for building the infrastructure necessary to keep men and equipment moving right up to the front lines. Casualties for the Battle of Iwo Jima are as followed: 19,217 American wounded or injured, over 6,100 Marines killed, 719 sailors killed, several naval vessels damaged, 153 airplanes and 137 tanks destroyed. The Japanese defenders lost almost their entire force defending the island. Of the 21,000 defenders, only 216 were taken prisoner. Iwo Jima is one of the most famous American battles of World War II, and certainly one of the most famous battles of the Pacific. Almost every American is aware of the photograph raising the flag on Iwo Jima, taken by Joe Rosenthal of the Associated Press, February 23, 1945. And most people are aware of the Marine Corps War Memorial it inspired, unveiled in 1954, overlooking the national capital. The battle has also been the center of many motion pictures. Clint Eastwood notably produced 2 movies showing the Japanese and American viewpoints, the American perspective being Flags of Our Fathers, and the Japanese perspective, Letters from Iwo Jima. The battle, however, is not just celebrated, it's also highly criticized, with many debating the worth of the island for the lives lost. Punctuating this loss of life is the first motion picture chronicling the event, titled To the Shores of Iwo Jima, which was produced by the United States Navy and United States Marine Corps. During its filming, 4 cameramen were killed in action, and 10 other camera operators were wounded. Among the dead was United States Marine Corps Sergeant Bill Janost, who shot the flag-raising sequence. His remains have never been recovered from the island. It's estimated the remains of around 280 men are still missing on the island. American commanders in early 1945 believed an amphibious landing on mainland Japan was inevitable. America was inching closer to Japan. They took the Mariana Islands in November of 1944, and Japan came under heavy bomber raids from these islands. But the Marianas were still over 2,000 kilometers or 1,300 miles away from mainland Japan. Iwo Jima was almost half the distance. It was believed Iwo Jima could support bombers by helping with emergency landings, providing a base for fighter escorts, and eliminating an early warning and interception airbase for the Japanese. Operation Detachment was the codename for the invasion of Iwo Jima. Initial intelligence expected the island might be taken in 1 week. Before the invasion, the island was bombarded and bombed for 9 months. But the concentrated and more intensive pre-landing bombardment, the most important action before a landing, came up short. Major General Harry Schmidt, commander of the Marine Landing Force, requested a 10-day heavy shelling of the island before the landings. However, Rear Admiral William Blandy, did not believe such a bombardment allowed him time to replenish his ship's ammunition before the landings. He believed 3 days of shelling was sufficient and would not compromise on his logistical needs. After the war, notable commanders like General Holland Smith bitterly complained that the lack of naval gunfire support cost significant Marine lives during the battle. The 3 days of shelling were nonetheless intensive. Every inch of the island was saturated by gunfire. Warships fired for 6-hour intervals. On the second day of shelling, the Navy became overconfident. The heavy cruiser USS Pensacola needlessly got within range of shore batteries and was hit 6 times, losing 17 crew. The Navy also attempted advancing 12 small craft with underwater demolition teams, but these were all fired upon and retreated. The destroyer aiding these craft, the USS Leutze, was further hit, losing 7 crew. The 3-day bombardment was further hampered by bad weather, reducing maximum daylight fire support. Despite it being clear the Japanese defenses remained capable, and the bombardment didn't get its full 3 days due to bad weather, the Marines would not get any extra days of shelling. A further concern arose amongst commanders that the island might be now more defendable, with countless shell craters providing obstacles and defensive positions. Of course, the impressive bombardment did still destroy bunkers and caves and cause casualties amongst the Japanese forces, but it's hard to estimate how many. The bombardment would have further hurt Japanese morale, with the island surrounded by a force near the size of the entire Japanese Navy combined. At the height of its power, the defenders knew their deaths were imminent. The Japanese knew they could not successfully defend Iwo Jima. The soldiers fighting there would be fighting to their deaths. General Tadamichi Kuribayashi, commanding the defense of the island, believed their cause would be worthwhile if they inflicted enough casualties on the Americans that would cause them to rethink their invasion of Japan, which arguably they did, but in a way Kuribayashi might not have predicted. Kuribayashi designed the defense of Iwo Jima, breaking from Japanese military doctrine. Defenses would not be established directly on the beaches, instead mutually supporting static heavy weapons and machine guns would create killing zones. Marines would have to cross and fill to advance on the island. Essentially every meter of the island would be paid for in life. Rather than any decisive or dynamic battles designed to push enemy forces off the island, Iwo Jima was set up more like a layered trench war. The Americans would be allowed to assemble on the beaches, so Japanese guns could cause maximum casualties. Even tanks were camouflaged and dug into defensive positions rather than used dynamically. Landmines and rockets were included in the defensive arsenal, even 320mm spigot mortars. The defensive strategy guaranteed Japanese defeat, but also would maximize American casualties. The southern area of the island centered around Mount Suribachi, a semi-independent sector with the main defense zone in the north. Pillboxes and bunkers were designed so that when they were cleared, they could later be reoccupied. Some bunkers had enough food, water, and ammunition for 3 months, and included fuel to power generators. Some barracks and bunkers were dug as deep as 75 feet. On Day 1, February 19, 1945, near 30,000 Marines landed on the southern end of the island. They would first drive north to isolate Mount Suribachi, then swing northeast to secure the airfields. The Marines at first landed unopposed, but once the beaches were full, as planned, the Japanese opened up with interlocking arms fire. Moving off the beaches was difficult. The black ash of the volcanic island made the earth slippery, even for tracked vehicles to progress. Men had to progress on foot until the Seabees could clear roads off the beach. Despite the hardships, Day 1 was successful in isolating Mount Suribachi and securing the southernmost airfield. On February 23rd, The American flag was famously planted on top of the mountain, shortly replaced thereafter by a second larger flag. The rest of the island, however, would take a grueling 30 more days to capture. The Americans had to take the rest of the island inch by inch, often having to blast or burn the Japanese out of their entrenched positions. Tanks, flamethrowers, and rocket trucks continued to flatten the island as the Marines progressed. The infrastructure established to supply the attack was immense, including roads, artillery positions, and field hospitals. The Japanese at no time during the battle showed signs of surrendering. Though Kobayashi was against wasteful banzai charges, one last such futile attack was undertaken at the end of March. Many of the just over 200 prisoners that were captured due to becoming incapacitated or knocked out during combat. Few surrendered willingly. It's believed Kobayashi died leading one of the final Japanese assaults, but it's not completely known how he died. His body was never identified. One-third of all Marine casualties in the Pacific were suffered at Iwo Jima, and 27 Medals of Honor were issued for actions during the battle. John Basilone, Medal of Honor recipient from the Guadalcanal campaign, earned the Navy Cross at Iwo Jima and gave his life there. Ultimately, the invasion of Iwo Jima didn't change the direction of the war in any significant way, but to the many B-29 pilots who used the island for emergency or safer landings, it was no doubt appreciated. The first emergency landing of a B-29 on the island occurred March 4, 1945, while the battle for the island was ongoing. This came as a huge morale boost to every American fighting for Iwo Jima. Alright, I'm Johnny. Thank you for watching this video on Iwo Jima, a battle that is sometimes polarizing, but definitely an important one in American history. Anyway, do take care, and have a nice rest of your day.